Welcome back. You watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm John Tobacco. We're coming to you live as we do every single day, noon to 2 Eastern. Today I'm in the Corona Bunker Studios in my house. Dow Jones having a pretty nice Friday today, a fantastic Friday, in fact. Up 350, Bitcoin just still right under 10,000. So lots of decent things happening for your portfolio out there. Now, if you're a landlord, not a lot of great things happening for you. And Jen Sidorova joins us right now. She's a representative for the Reason Foundation. She's a landlord and a YouTube sensation. And Jen, it sure sounds crazy. It's almost like a conundrum where, what people are fighting for, and AOC's out there talking about, no one should pay rent and everything else. But in the same token, then the landlords who have mortgages, they don't get paid, and then it could lead to more banking problems, which could really rock our society. How do we get out of this mess?
Right. So you're absolutely right. The problem is that mortgages are often securitized and they're packed into bonds that are then sold to investors. And those investors can be pension funds, insurance companies, or retirement accounts. So in a way, it goes back to the same tenant. It might that same tenant who didn't pay rent might not then get either pension check or investment returns on their account. So it all goes back to the people that this movement is trying to protect. So we get a bunch of unintended consequences like this.
Yeah,
And I
I'm
think
with you.
another
And,
thing,
I'll just point out to you, years ago, I was on the New York State Pension Task Force, and most of the public employee retirement systems across this country, their retirement funds, a lot of them are invested in real estate investment trusts and rental properties that generated income over an actuarial table. And you're right. Not only will the landlords and the banks be hurt, but I didn't even take it that far. The investments of the pension plans, which are the largest single investor in the country, the collection of all of them, their pension plans could get killed by this.
right? So we already have an issue with pensions in this country. Obviously, the public pension funds are currently only 73% funded. That means they only have 73 cents per each dollar that they owe. And some places like Kentucky, New Jersey, Illinois, they are even in a much worse position than anyone else because they don't even have half of what they owe in their retirement accounts. And although retirement public pension funds, their portfolios are usually diversified, and so real estate is only part of it. But this doesn't really help anyway because the market is in such condition that overall, Moody's is predicting that they're going to have the investment returns are going to be negative 21, and on average they expect about 7.2% average return. So they're going to be hit pretty hard.
Wow.
Jen, let me ask you, there's no state that's been hit harder by this, both economically and health-wise than New York. And that also happens to be a state, and where we are in New York City, a city where there are many, many renters. John referenced Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's call for a rent strike. I don't know that there's anybody that think that makes any sense. But let me ask you about the two new provisions that Governor Cuomo enacted yesterday. One is a continuing ban on evictions. Nobody's able to be evicted until August 20th. And then the second is allowing renters to use their security deposits to pay down rent. What's your view on both of those? Understanding that a lot of renters are having a very tough time right now, and the last thing we want to see is pandemic homelessness to go with our COVID pandemic.
Right, you're absolutely right. I guess the intention here is to avoid mass homelessness, but landlords are not the villains of coronavirus. They're not supposed to be. They're not. They can't just. The government can't just bail on landlords. They're also part of the society, and their property rights should be protected the same way. So, first of all, using your one's direct deposit towards rent. Direct deposit is meant to cover any sort of repairs, any sort of damage done to the property after the tenant leaves. And so using that towards rent doesn't really make sense because then what's going to happen if the landlord needs the direct deposit to make the repairs. Secondly, prolonging the eviction ban, the eviction moratorium until August 20th, is creating a situation when some people are going to be allowed to stay in the properties without paying for practically half a year. So there is no monetary incentive for those tenants to pay whatsoever. And I don't see how this is helpful because right now, everybody who is unemployed is getting an extra $600. Then everybody got a relief package and with $1,200. So that means, where did this money come from? If there was an intention to help out those, if there is an intention to help out tenants, then there should have been a fund created where more funds could have possibly paid directly to landlords or something of that kind.
Yeah, I wonder, Jen, those are some great observations. I wonder, when people start talking about, oh, the recovery is going to be fast and wicked and all this other stuff, with especially here in New York, them extending the evictions till August 20th, what does that mean to someone who was just about, to get a new apartment in New York? Let's call it June 1st, right? Hey, I'm going to move in June 1st. You can actually, it's going to kill new rentals until at least September, because you can actually move in and never pay for 3 months. And then I'm sure there's going to be a moratorium on from August 20th. Every landlord's not going to have a pile of evictions ready. They're probably going to have to give the people, 30 days notice. So it seems to me no landlord would even take in a new tenant right now, because they could be screwed till year end just on the new people even.
Right. As a matter of fact, I have a tenant that moved in just the beginning of this month, and his lease is ending on August 15th. So he can go without paying this whole time and then leave, and his contract is going to be over before this is done. And I think
So,
what's
Jen,
missing.
I don't mean to interrupt, but we are somewhat limited on time. Understanding everything that you said, and understanding your opposition to you allowing the security deposit to be used for rent and a prohibition on evictions, what would you do if you were in charge and you're faced with all these renters who all of a sudden are out of work and are only going to get that extra souped up unemployment for 13 weeks, and they're having a difficult time? In some cases, you're dealing with people that have had their breadwinners actually be hospitalized due to the coronavirus. What would be your plan for being fair to the landlords on the one hand, but not evicting all these people and seeing the streets flooded with homeless on the other?
I think, first of all, government shouldn't interfere and dictate landlords and tenants' relationships. Most of us landlords are going to negotiate with our tenants. We're going to try to find a common ground, because we need tenants as much as they need us. Half of the landlords in this country are small mom and pop shops, less than 10 units. I live in Buffalo, and half of the city lives like that. They would rent out one unit of the house and live in the other. And we're just people like everybody else. We are also immigrants. Like, I'm an immigrant. And, after all, at the end of the day, property rights should be expected. I immigrated from Russia, where property rights aren't expected. And this is not the kind of America I signed up for, where government can just take away my property rights. So I think we can negotiate with our tenants, and municipalities should decide on their own what they should do.
Well, that's not the worst thing I ever heard. I am a big free market capitalist, and, I think in some instances the government could set some wide guidelines, like you can't evict someone, but also give them the right to negotiate something fair, maybe do some forbearance, maybe extend their lease a little further. But right now it seems like the landlord's hands are tied. Jen, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. The next time you're down from Buffalo here in New York, you got to come in the studio with us and have a little liquid lunch.